of the game. AmpSquare.tv understands how important advertisement is and is proud to express that it's truly the only plugged-in internet television production company on the market. Amp2.tv live streams all their shows across all the major selling markets in the U.S. and abroad. Call them at 866-224-5422. The AmpSquare.tv library allows productions to be seen over and over again, making commercial platforms more usable. Call 866-224-5422. Toll free 866-224-5422. Amp2.tv, the first and only internet television network that's truly plugged in. 866-224-5422. That's AMP2.TV. You say you need to lose weight for the holidays or just to stay healthy. Nothing seems to be working except frustration. The wait is over. Order your organic detox tea and resolution drops from the Wait Is Over company and start feeling better by shedding pounds. Not all detox systems are the same. Listen to those who have used the tea with fantastic results. Visit her website, totalLifeChanges.com/421-9711 to get all the information you need to feeling better. Drink 2 cups a day and you too can lose 5 pounds in 5 days. Call today, 954-696-8330, and listen to testimonials about proper weight loss using the tea. Ask about the opportunity to earn $50,000 by Christmas with a Total Life Changes business opportunity. Call today, 954-696-8330, and change your life today. Do you know of anyone who lives with pain or has high blood pressure, diabetes, or asthma? Do seizures or any other types of illness run in the family? Then this message could be very important to you. Rain International introduces Soul, a new energized drink that revitalizes and detoxifies naturally. Soul offers you the opportunity to feel better and get help with many illnesses that may have overtaken your body. Visit their website at myrainlife.com/God blessings and get all the information you need to let Rain Solution heal your soul. If you want to talk to Soul, call 954-696-8330 and begin your steps to better health. Rain International also has job opportunities that can change your life in 7 different categories. Call today and get a healthy body, a healthy mind, and create a healthy bank account. 954-696-8330. Call today and let's make it rain.
This is Talk 1470.
Talk 1470.
WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Welcome to our show. You're listening to Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections, a place to learn about and celebrate creative arts therapy. Each week we'll explore new ways that music, art, and dance can reach, connect with, and help individuals of all stages of health and wellness. Hi, I'm Bree Bynan, a board-certified music therapist and the managing partner for the Palm Beach Music Therapy Institute. Tune in as I interview professionals from healthcare and educational backgrounds on the impact of the creative arts. If you prefer to watch our live video stream, simply visit www.pbmti.com. Hi, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. Again, my name is Bree Bynan, and I'm a board-certified music therapist right here in Southeast Florida with the Palm Beach Music Therapy Institute. Before we get into today's program, which is full of really wonderful information and a little Halloween fun at the end of our show, I want to follow up on something we were talking about last week. If you weren't able to listen in or watch last week, I will fill you in. We had 2 guests, Mrs. Wellington, actually, Karen Turk, who was here talking about challenges as a caregiver for her mother who is living with Alzheimer's disease and how she has found comfort through hiring a music therapist to work with her mother. And we also had her mother's music therapist here, Brian Hallilay, who's a board-certified music therapist here in the area. And as we were talking to both of them, Brian shared a story about a songwriting intervention that he did with Karen's mom, which surprised her. she was sharing that if you were to ask her mom where she's from, she wouldn't be able to answer that question necessarily, but for her to explore that with Brian through a songwriting process, they were able to write a song together about the place where she's from and where she considers home to be. We didn't have the clip of that last week, but we do this week. So before we continue with today's show, I do want to follow up with that. So we're going to listen to a clip. Again, it's Brian working with Karen's mom as they rewrite the words to Take Me Home Country Roads to reflect her memories.
So if we were to rewrite that song, maybe it'd sound something like this. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. Home in Brooklyn, grass on Main Street, take me home. Country roads, take me home. Tappan Zee Bridge.
Just wanted to make sure that everyone listening and watching got to experience that moment, which was so special, and to see Karen's face when Brian was talking about it and how it allowed her mom to share those memories in that way that now a recording they'll always have was really special. So thank you for listening to that with us. So today we have a couple things going on. One, we're going to start by talking about the importance of having a good mentor. This is important in many stages of life, as a student, as a child, and as a professional, whether in the beginning of your career, in the middle of your career. It really doesn't matter where you are in your stage of life. It's really important to have someone you consider a mentor to connect with, to help you grow, to help you maybe try something new. So I'm going to be talking about a few things that are can help you when you seek out a mentor. And the reason that I'm sharing this is because I have the wonderful privilege of being able to interview one of my mentors today, who will be joining us through the phone line from Rochester, New York, Dr. Betsy King from Nazareth College, which is where I went to school. Last week's guest, Brian, went to school. The guest before that, Karen House, all of us music therapists that work together in the community, all came from the same school. Very small world. I promise it's not the only school that has music therapy. Just total coincidence, but a real honor to be able to talk to Dr. King today. She recently wrote a book, her music therapy memoir, Music Heard So Deeply. She's going to be talking about that, and also about some really exciting things that are going on at the college up in Rochester, New York, which, even though it is 1,500 miles away from here, a lot of us have family up in New York, a lot of us have connections to New York, but also it's exciting to hear about things that are happening around the country, around the world, because it impacts the whole field. So really excited to have her on talking about that today. Before we get into that, I do want to share something I found online from a website called theglasshammer.com, which is a career resource for professional women. But these tips on why to seek out a mentor transcend career. It really can apply to life in general, certainly not just for women, but for anyone. So I just want to read a few of these off. I thought this was a really great list for reasons why you should seek out a mentor. Perspective and experience. A mentor can give you the benefit of his or her perspective and experience. He or she can help you assimilate to a new position and give you an insider's view on how to get things done. Think outside the box. A mentor can help you look at a situation in new ways. He or she can ask hard questions and help you solve problems. This was another critical area for me. My mentors helped me gain a level of self-awareness that I wasn't getting on my own. My mentor helped me learn and use emotional intelligence, even helped me craft exercises and offer practice and review so that I could become proficient in understanding myself, my impact on others, my other people's emotional being and state, and how to use that to work to work together better. It was a big growth spurt for me, both at work and personally. That's a quote from someone they interviewed for this article. Define and reach long-term goals. A mentor can help you define your career path and ensure that you don't lose focus and continue down that road, even when you become distracted by day-to-day pressures. Absolutely. Accountability. When you know you're meeting with your mentor, you ensure that all the tasks you discussed in your last meeting are completed. Absolutely. Again, this does not just apply to work. It can apply to a student in school, a child who is either going through school or through different clubs, sports, social activities, and also obviously apply to the professional situation as well. A trusted colleague to discuss issues. A mentor can be a great sounding board for all issues, whether you're having difficulty with your immediate supervisor, an ethical dilemma, or need advice on how to tackle a new project or ask for a raise. A champion and an ally. This is huge. A mentor who knows you well can be a strong champion of your positive attributes and an ally during any bumpy spots in your career. Number 7 says expand your contacts and network. A mentor can help expand your network of contacts and business acquaintances. Number 8, open doors. A mentor can open doors within your company, other companies, onto a board, again, in the community, maybe in your faith community, applying for schools, applying for any different organizations. Inspire. A mentor whose work you admire can be a strong inspiration. And number 10 says to work better. With the help of a good mentor, you can work more efficiently with a clearer view of the future you are trying to achieve. This helps you feel more confident, which leads to better performance and more success along your chosen road. This last quote says, long-term success. The mentor is the most important factor in a person's career. Again, this is talking job specific, but it is open to so many different life situations. If you don't currently have a mentor or someone that you identify as a mentor, it can be a range of people. It can be a family member, a parent. I know a parent is often a mentor for myself as well, as we go through different life stages. Someone in your faith community, someone in your social community, someone that you meet going through education, a professor, or even a classmate, or someone that you have identified in your work, that someone you really appreciate the work they're doing. You can, the things that they're doing inspire you, and you want to learn more about them and how they can help your life. Look for these people in your life that do inspire you, that give you excitement about changing something about yourself. Maybe it's growing in a certain area or going for a new opportunity that maybe you're not currently going after. Seek out these people in your circle, in your life, that you think you will get inspiration from. So again, we're talking today, we're going to be talking to Dr. Betsy King, and the reason that I identify her as my mentor is when she came to work at Nazareth College, I was in need of a mentor, I think, in my field, as someone to kind of give me a direction. I was so passionate about the field of music therapy, and I just wasn't sure exactly what direction to take that in. I was so thankful to be able to meet with her on a weekly basis, and she actually told me about an internship down here in South Florida, which I would have never known about, and encouraged me to audition for it. And 7 years later, I am still here, and I am so thankful to be here. My life has changed in so many wonderful ways because someone encouraged me to follow my path. And again, I'm so honored to have her on the show tonight. I look forward to you all meeting her after this break. The Palm Beach Music Therapy Institute is a professional music therapy practice serving medical, community, and educational settings throughout Southeast Florida. With our experienced team of 11 board-certified music therapists, we use music and research-based therapeutic interventions to help individuals of all ages and abilities reach their goals and increase their quality of life. For more information on our services and programs, please visit our website at pbmti.com, engage with us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or call us at 561-747-9944. You are listening to Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. If you'd like to join the conversation, the toll-free number is 888-565-1470. Now back to the show. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. We're so glad you're here. Before the break, I started to introduce our guest today, who is joining us from Rochester, New York, Dr. Betsy King. Dr. King, are you on the line?
I am indeed.
Wonderful. Very good to talk with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy to be on your show.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking about a lot tonight. I want to just start by, obviously, we're going to build up to promoting this memoir that you've written, which we're so excited about in the field because, as I'm sure you'll talk about later, it's different than a lot of the music therapy literature that's out there today.
Yep. It's the first time I think somebody's written something for the general public that covers the scope of what music therapists do. I've been very fortunate in my career, so I have a lot of fun telling the stories and describing music therapy that way.
That's great, and what a great voice that you have to be able to share that story. So, I know you've had a long, very exciting career, and so what about your career made you want to put all of that into a personal memoir?
You know, I've been thinking about this book for a long time, and I'm glad I guess I didn't get around to it until this past year, since many of the things I talk about in the book happened in the last decade, so I'm glad I waited. But as I said before, I've been fortunate in my career to have worked in a number of different areas of music therapy practice. And it's just how it worked out for me. It's not as though I was losing jobs on a regular basis, but I just had opportunities that came my way. So instead of staying in one area, for example, hospice care or special education, I realized at some point that I had a chance to work with children with developmental disabilities, adults and adolescents in medical care, adults and elders in rehabilitation, gerontology work, addiction recovery. By the time I got to working on my PhD in midlife, I had an opportunity to work with inmates in a county jail. And at some point I started to think, goodness, I have stories from all of these areas, and each of them illustrates something about our profession. So it would be wonderful if I could put them all in one place.
Absolutely, and I can just speak personally from hearing those stories, going through the college experience. I mean, it was so informative for all of us, not knowing what that clinical experience was going to look like, to hear about all the different vignettes from all those different settings. So I think this was a perfect opportunity to put that all together.
Well, something told me along the way to make notes, to write things down. And I have a colleague here who's often said to me, you know, why did you think to write them down? And I'm not entirely sure why. I think I was inspired at some point by reading Oliver Sacks's books of essays. Just the idea that if you wrote down your most interesting cases, at some point there might be an opportunity to share them. Mm-hmm. So I did that, and now I encourage everyone to do the same thing, because you don't know down the road. I have stories in this book that happened 25 and 30 years ago, and they're still important to tell because they still describe something really interesting or exciting about music therapy. But if I hadn't written them down back then, I wouldn't be able to remember them today.
Absolutely. I think that's a good reminder, too, to anyone working, not only a music therapist, but anyone working in the field. I know just in my, 7 years of being down here working, mostly in medical settings, working mostly in hospice care with seniors, we accumulate so many incredible stories, and I really feel so lucky, especially because the individuals that I work with, knowing that I am, and I may have said this on the show before, but knowing that I'm part of the last generation that's going to hear some of these incredible stories of World War II and first accounts from Holocaust survivors, and it's just such an honor, and it's a really good reminder to write these down, because they're not stories that more generations will be able to hear.
Well, and we work so often with people who don't get to tell their stories for various reasons. They have impairments that make telling a story a laborious task, for example, somebody who has difficulty communicating, but we have the time and we're with them long enough to learn about what they want to tell us. So I think, yeah, we're a repository and we can make the keepsakes for them. And you don't know how you're going to share them later. It might be in a talk, it might be in a book, it might be something you pass on as a teacher.
And you know what, it just speaks to, I don't know if you were able to hear the first part of the show, but as a follow-up from when Brian was on last week, we shared a small clip of songwriting with a client that he's working with Alzheimer's. And when he was describing the clip last week, the client's daughter was saying, I didn't know these things. I didn't know that my mom liked country music. I didn't know that her streets were covered with grass that she references in the song. And so she was even learning about her own mother through this songwriting experience.
Oh, that's just marvelous.
Yeah. So, what is your opinion on why do you think it's music therapy session in particular kind of unlocks the door to some of these storytelling for these individuals?
Well, I these days I do tend to think about it from a neurological perspective, but I think you can also think about it from an emotional and spiritual perspective, even if you don't know the neurology of how it works. But music is tapping into networks in the brain that are going to trigger memory, trigger emotional reminiscence. Even if you don't have a very specific memory of something, you're going to remember the emotion of the time, and that may bring forth more pictures or smells or snippets of audio that you remember. I think it's the fact that music taps into our cognition and our emotion and our spiritual lives that can trigger all of the detail coming back to us when we might not have remembered it in, say, a talk therapy session, or simply if we were trying, maybe even if we were journaling. Music has that power.
Very well said. It's certainly a gift that I know myself, I'm sure many others feel as a music therapist to be able to use music in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's a responsibility, too.
Yeah,
because
sure.
if you, this is why I think music therapists spend so much time thinking not just about the music itself, but what are you going to do with what comes out of the music?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and sometimes it catches you off guard. Sometimes you're not expecting just how much you're going to get from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was working with a gentleman with Alzheimer's for the past 5 years, and one day he related he had lost a lot of his language skills, but one day a piece of music brought forth something that he could tell me, and it was a very personal, emotional moment, and I wasn't expecting it. But you have to take a breath. And, of course, we always talk in therapy about being present, but being very conscious of what's happening in the moment in a session. And so I was relieved that I was able to switch gears and follow his train of thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a precious time. We weren't going to hear those things very often.
Mm-hmm. Wow, awesome. I know you have so many incredible stories in this book. We'll talk a little bit more about them in a moment. But so you talk about this journey that you've had through working with so many different settings, so many different individuals, and it somehow brought you to Rochester, New York.
Yes. Well, I think one of the interesting things that happened to me, this is one of those great life lessons that a lot of songwriters have written about. There are several songs out there that say, I thought at the time I thought something was going wrong, but as it turns out, that was the right path for me to take. And I had gone down to Dallas, Texas to work, to get my master's degree in music therapy, master's equivalency degree. My undergraduate was in violin performance. So I had moved down there because that's where my master's degree program was, and I got married when I moved down there. Started a music therapy practice and began gathering clients and contracts at various facilities. And then there came the point at which my husband left, and I got a divorce, and I suddenly had to rethink what I was going to be doing. So fortunately, I had good support, and that all worked out. But then the fact that I was single, and I was from the northern part of the country, and I was sitting in Dallas thinking, oh my goodness, it's really hot here. And I don't enjoy it all that much. And I suddenly realized I could leave if I wanted to. So I had been teaching at Southern Methodist University there, and I decided to get my PhD. And it was such an interesting experience to get it in the middle of my life rather than directly after my other schooling. So at age, I guess, 42, 44, I went back to school at the University of Kansas. And that was a really wonderful, very almost indulgent time to be able to look back over the past 20 years at that point and think about what all the different things I had done meant and develop theory and develop perspective on all those experiences. And then to study further and become more specific about what I wanted to do with the next part of my career. So what might have seemed like a real boulder in the middle of the road, which was the divorce, was the thing that absolutely turned me in the right direction. Went to Kansas, got my PhD, then knew that I could look for teaching jobs elsewhere. And Nazareth, I walked in the door here and knew it was where I needed to be. We'll be talking about why that is. But I knew immediately that it was the right place to be. And really without that seeming difficulty in my life, I wouldn't have ended up here.
And absolutely, I mean, personally, I can vouch for that. It feels that way, that it just brought such a really exciting new energy to the program when you came. We were so excited when you came, and so many things have happened since I've left, and it's just incredible to keep up with the developments and how the program has grown since that time. And you just this year, correct? You just opened the new York Wellness and Rehabilitation Institute on campus?
Yes. When I got here, one of the first things I learned, because some of the faculty were sitting on my search committee, was that little tiny Nazareth College, we have about 3,000 students, had degrees in physical therapy and speech-language pathology and art therapy and nursing and social work. I thought, my goodness, this is almost the rehab team that I used to work with. And there were discussions about working together. Within a year after I got here, representatives of each of those areas, we all went together to conferences to learn about interprofessional work. And we were led by a wonderful dean of our School of Health and Human Services, Shirley Sakaris, to form, even before we had a building, to form a real interprofessional on-campus clinical team. So I had gotten a music therapy clinic started on campus, and we were fortunate to hire my colleague, Lori Keogh. She came in to run it. We added an OT program, occupational therapy, to the degrees we have here. And eventually, we also added a play therapist who does who adds that dimension. And so now, we were all cramming for space in a tiny building that used to be a dorm, and we were actually in the trailer out back. But there was a vision, and Shirley Sakaris had a vision, and the college had a vision, and we raised the money to basically double the size of that building. And it is now a state-of-the-art health institute, a wellness and rehabilitation institute, with clinics, each of which trains students and serves, this is the really wonderful part, serves underserved people in our community, people whose insurance has run out, or people who can't access certain kinds of services for whatever reason. They can come to Nazareth, and there is a fully functioning speech-language clinic for both adults and children, occupational therapy clinic, physical therapy clinic, play therapy clinic, music therapy clinic, art therapy clinic. Then there are social workers and nursing students involved with all the patients as well.
That's amazing. It's so exciting to hear, not only for the field and just so proud that that's happening in Rochester and is such an example for things that can happen throughout the country, throughout the world. We're going to continue talking about the new program and your book just after this break. The Palm Beach Music Therapy Institute is a professional music therapy practice serving medical, community, and educational settings throughout Southeast Florida. With our experienced team of 11 board-certified music therapists, we use music and research-based therapeutic interventions to help individuals of all ages and abilities reach their goals and increase their quality of life. For more information on our services and programs, please visit our website at pbmti.com. Engage with us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or call us at 561-747-9944. You are listening to Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. If you'd like to join the conversation, the toll-free number is 888-565-1470. Now back to the show. Thank you so much for listening to Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. Again, I'm Bree Bynan. We're talking today about mentors, the importance of finding someone in your life who can inspire you and encourage you. I have the opportunity to be interviewing and speaking with one of my mentors today, Dr. Betsy King. She's talking about her book and also her position at Nazareth College. I want to remind you that you can connect with us and join the conversation online on Facebook or at our Twitter at pbmti.com. The last segment of the show today, we're going to pay a little tribute to Halloween, which is coming up in 2 days. We want to hear your horror stories, okay? Let me be clear about what I mean by that. So we're looking at music therapists, any kind of therapist, someone who works in the field who maybe has a story of a time when things didn't exactly go as planned. If you don't mind calling in and sharing your Halloween horror story with us, something embarrassing or maybe a little cringeworthy, Dr. King and I are going to be listening, and we are going to choose the best horror story to give away one of her books, Music Heard So Deeply, a music therapy memoir. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. King.
I'm just thrilled.
Wonderful. So before the break, we were talking about the New York Wellness and Rehabilitation Institute, how it's one of a kind, setting a new standard for interprofessional care. And this is, not only are you obviously a professor at the college, but you're also doing clinical work, correct?
One of the things that's wonderful about teaching here is that you do get the opportunity to continue some clinical work. I don't have much chance anymore, but I do regularly work in concert with the Speech Language Pathology Clinic, working with adults who have, through either a traumatic brain injury and more commonly after a stroke, have lost either language or speech abilities. And so we work on recovery of those. And one of the speech-language pathology professors and I are getting ready to do some research, clinical research, on a music therapy technique that I hope will help people with aphasia improve their ability to use yes and no accurately. Because when you can't speak and can't get your thoughts across, if you can at least get a clear yes and no across to someone, that can be incredibly valuable. So we're going to be working on that. And that kind of opportunity, any professor will tell you, it is so difficult to find the time for research, but when you can simply walk across your campus and, in 3 minutes and be in contact with all the people you need and the space you need, it's really a privilege. And most of our students now have the chance. One of the times, you may have described to your listeners before that music therapy students all have clinical experiences while they're in school, and almost any of our students will end up in at least one co-treat situation, either with the physical therapy clinic, art therapy clinic, speech language pathology clinic, occupational therapy clinic. They'll have a chance to work directly with a client or a group of clients with a student from one of those other professions, supervised by both professors.
Wow. What an amazing opportunity.
I get a chance to give feedback to a speech-language pathology student, and the speech-language pathology professor gives feedback to my student.
That's excellent. We've at PBMTI, we've in the last year launched a new program down at Memorial Regional Rehab Institute, which is in Hollywood, Florida, just south of Fort Lauderdale. And we have one of our therapists, Trent Barrick, who's a neurologic music therapist, working there right as part of the team. So he's co-treating every day with the speech and language pathologist, with the PT, with OT. And one thing that he's really noticed, among many things, is that, and that his coworkers have said to him as well, is how much the music motivates the clients, the patients, not only in music therapy, but also in their other therapies as well, and the impact that it has on staff as well.
Absolutely. I actually learned most of my interprofessional work during the 8 years that I was working at a rehabilitation hospital. It really is a model for that kind of teamwork. And I think partly because often the therapy areas are all physically near each other in a hospital like that, so you have a lot of opportunities to connect. But there seems to be a real openness towards it, and I learned so much from my colleagues those years. And yes, obviously it changed their lives when, for example, suddenly there was music in the physical therapy gym while people were working. It did change the atmosphere for the better.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We're just going to put a pause there because we actually have our first caller in. Hello, caller, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, can you share your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Carla, and I'm calling from Bar Harbor, Maine.
Ooh, awesome. Carla, it's good to talk to you. Are you calling to share one of your horror stories with us?
I am.
Yes.
I think I've got a horror story for you. or a cringeworthy moment.
Yes, we're ready for it.
Well, this was during my music therapy internship many, many years ago. And I guess I have to give you a little bit of background to get the story going. So during my internship down in Palm Beach, Florida, I decided to take up rowing. And I would go down to the rowing center in the morning before my internship. And I would put one of their boats in the water by myself and go out and do some crew rowing. So one day, I just did this before work, and I tipped the boat over and fell into the water.
Oh, no.
And got soaking wet, of course, a little petrified of being eaten by an alligator during my overturned boat, but managed to get back into the boat and back to the boathouse where I would always go and take a shower before going to work or going to my internship in the morning. So I always took a change of clothes with me, but I did not take a change of underwear with me. And I was soaked to the skin. So for the first time ever, I went commando that day for my internship.
That is a horror story.
Morning.
Yeah, it gets better.
Yeah.
I do know this story.
So that morning, I was getting ready to go downstairs to our inpatient unit to do some rounding with my wonderful internship supervisor, who was standing behind me, and I was at my desk getting my things ready. And I bent over to grab some papers that I had under my desk, and my pants split open. And I don't mean a little hole. I mean they split completely open, like the seam in the back split from, where the belt would come in the back all the way up to the front where your zipper ends.
Oh, my gosh. So,
and there I was, bending over right next to my male internship director, commando, on probably, I think it was about the second month of my internship.
So it's just a little background here. So, as I mentioned earlier, Betsy had told me about this internship at then Hospice Palm Beach County, encouraged me to come down, went right into the hands of Carla, who we're talking about, another wonderful mentor in my life, a little scared, never been so far from home. And you just made me feel so much better when you shared this story with me, and I just thought, there's really nothing I'm going to do in my internship that's ever going to be as horrifying as that.
I'm so glad I could make so many future interns feel better with my horror story.
Absolutely. I'm sure I'm not the only one in that boat. Thank you so much for calling and sharing that, Carla.
You're welcome.
Take care. And actually, we have another call, so I'm going to keep you on hold for just one more second, Dr. King, and I think we may have another horror story. Hello, caller, are you there?
I'm here.
Hello there. Can you share your name and where you're calling from?
This is Karen calling from Palm Beach.
Oh, Karen. I actually didn't recognize your voice. Yes, I can't wait to hear your horror story.
Okay, it's really funny. So this this happened during my internship, which was not too many years ago, we'll say. I was working with kids that had Down syndrome. This was in a preschool. And one of my little kiddos, we were working on eye contact and making eye contact during our greeting song. So I was singing hello, and it was time for her to say hello to me. And she had a habit of always turning away from whoever she was talking to. So during her turn, she said hello, and I kept asking her, "Oh, who are you talking to? Who are you saying hello to?" And she kept saying "you" without looking at me. But I really wanted her to look, so I kept counting it. And then finally, I asked her one more time, "Who are you saying hello to?" And she turned her head so slowly, and then this little raspy voice said, "Karen."
That just gave me chills.
Pretty horrifying.
Where'd you go from there?
I think I just tried not to laugh. Good job. And just kept moving on.
Yeah, there you go. You got that speech production. Try to find the goal achieved there. That's definitely a very good horror story. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my goodness, we have another horror story. This is amazing. All right. Caller, are you on?
Here.
Hello?
Yes, this is Elisa.
Hey, Elisa. Are you had a horror story for us?
I do have a horror story for you. I guess when I'm listening to the radio live is a little bit ahead of me, so I was confused for a second. But I do have a cringeworthy moment for you.
Okay.
Last year when I was in the field, I was seeing a patient at a facility, and I was sitting in my little tripod chair right up close to where the patient was seated in her wheelchair. And lo and behold, during the middle of my session, the nurse from the facility walked into the room, and while I was in mid-song, she started doing a wound dressing change, changing the bandage on the patient's heel. And I guess in the process was scraping some of the dead skin off of the patient's wound from her heel, and a bit of the skin actually fell onto the top of my foot. I was wearing closed-toed shoes, but the top of my foot was exposed because I was wearing flats. So I, of course, sprayed my entire foot with hand sanitizer after that, but I will never forget it.
Oh, yeah. No, you'll never forget that. Yeah. Oh, that's a very, very good cringeworthy horror story. I think I would probably wear snow boots every session after that.
I definitely learned my lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why we give the instruction in practicum class. You must wear closed-toed shoes.
That's right. Very good advice.
It's for a reason.
Absolutely. Very good advice. Thank you so much for calling in.
You're welcome.
Oh, those were good ones.
They were good ones.
Very good.
You tell bodily fluid stories.
Yep, absolutely. As you know, working in medical settings or actually school settings too.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's going to happen. Absolutely. All right, so we are just about to go to our next commercial break. When we come back, we're going to hear more about the York Rehabilitation Institute and Dr. King's book. Thanks so much. The Palm Beach Music Therapy Institute is a professional music therapy practice serving medical, community, and educational settings throughout Southeast Florida. With our experienced team of 11 board-certified music therapists, we use music and research-based therapeutic interventions to help individuals of all ages and abilities reach their goals and increase their quality of life. For more information on our services and programs, please visit our website at pbmti.com, engage with us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or call us at 561-747-9944. You are listening to Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. If you'd like to join the conversation, the toll-free number is 888-565-1470. Now back to the show. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. Again, my name is Bree Bynum, and I'm talking to Dr. Betsy King tonight. We're talking about her music therapy memoir, Music Heard So Deeply, and also talking about her work at Nazareth College in Rochester, New York. We've been taking some callers in because as a special Halloween little giveaway here, we want to hear your clinical in-the-field horror stories. We've already heard some pretty cringeworthy stories, so keep those coming in if you want to call in, 888-565-1470. Before we talk more about horror stories, Dr. King, I wonder if you share some of the stories that inspired you to write this book. I know you've been collecting them over the years, and there's just some incredible ones. Just to point out one chapter specifically, the emergency room stories. Just one
that
day.
Is wonderful. Yeah,
amazing.
I think maybe the story to talk about is the little boy who started crying one afternoon when I was there with a student. I had been in a room with a patient who wasn't interested in music therapy, which does happen, and I heard him crying, and his mother sounded like she was really losing her mind, and as loudly as he was crying, you could understand. And I think the thing that's most interesting about the story is that this was a little guy who was about 2 years old. And yet, when we got involved with him, and all the details are in the story, so I won't go on and on, but when we got involved with him, we put a mallet in his fist, which was clenched tightly as he cried, and he was flailing his arms as he cried. But when we put a drum under the mallet, every time he flailed as he cried, he gave a drum beat. And we started to play a song that matched that drum beat, that used his name and just said the word music over and over again. And then we began to pull the drum away a little bit so that the drum beat would slow down, and he gradually began to cry more slowly and then cry more quietly and then eventually become quiet. Of course, the first time we tried this, he opened his eyes suddenly, saw that we were all there, and began crying again. So we had to start all over again. But eventually we got him calm enough that we were able to start a little blues song. And what do you know, this little 2-year-old, I would play on the guitar, ba-dum, ba-dum, and he would answer vocally. He'd say, in the space that was appropriate for the voice. And then I would again play, da-dum, ba-dum, da-dum, ba-dum. And pretty soon we were making music. His mother eventually began singing kind of a death chant along with it, and it was quite amazing. We were making music that you could practically put on a record, except for the fact that his words weren't words. And it just taught me how intrinsic music is for so many of us, even at such a young age. And he was making music with us that was completely musically satisfying to all of us in the room. And then, of course, what we were also doing was keeping him calm enough to receive his medication. We were teaching his mother a way of calming him and herself when he got hysterical in the future. So there were many wonderful goals being met, but I felt completely satisfied as a musician as well. So that was a wonderful experience.
I mean, what a difference, like you said, it made to the child, obviously to the family, I'm sure to the staff as well, to see that response.
Hearing it down the hall. They wanted to know why music couldn't be wafting down the hall up the pediatric emergency room every week.
Oh, and you had a student with you, right, that day?
I did. Yeah.
What an incredible opportunity for them to see that moment as well.
Well, and we proceeded into another room where it was a very receptive young girl, but she ended up having to have a medical procedure that she was quite afraid of. And we had made quite a bit of music before that medical procedure started, but when it did start, she was hysterical, crying very loudly, pretty much screaming. And I remember my student was, sort of shrinking back against the wall at how loud and passionate it was. And yet afterwards, the mother and the nurses told us that it was the calmest she'd ever been for the procedure. So it was interesting to think, goodness, what was it like before we got there? But also to recognize that any help that we can give is something that they didn't have before.
Yeah, absolutely. And all these stories and so much more are included in your book. It's not just for music therapists, right? Anyone.
In fact, it's written not for music therapists. That you don't have to have any medical knowledge or musical knowledge to read the book. On purpose, I didn't write any musical excerpts in it. You don't have to be able to read music. It's written for people who are not professionals in the field.
That's great. And so before we keep going down our Halloween path here and get too far away from talking about the book, how can people reach you or find the book, buy the book? How can they get in contact with that?
Well, the book is available. Probably the first place to go, just to get all the different links for it, is to go to PreludeMusicTherapy.com. So all one word, Prelude like the music, PRELUDE, PreludeMusicTherapy.com. There's a link at the top that says the name of the book. If you click on that, there's a page, and it will give you chapter outlines, so you can see if it's a book you'd be interested in reading, and links to the places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and my publisher, Book Locker, where you can get either a paperback or an ebook.
That's great, and I've got my ebook on my iPad. It doesn't. I said first I saw Kindle. I thought, oh no, do I have to have a Kindle? But you don't. It can go on any device.
It's in a format that can be read through on your iBooks, Kindle, almost any format.
Okay, wonderful. And are you going to be at conference this year?
I am going to be at conference this year.
Okay, wonderful. We have our annual Music Therapy, National Music Therapy Conference coming up in Kansas City in a few weeks. So if you are a music therapist that's going to be there, you can find Dr. King at conference and talk to her about the book.
I won't be selling the book at conference, but I'll have flyers.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great. All right, so you obviously have a million stories. You've shared them with students, both inspiring and horror.
And horror. I'm really going to cheat here. Most of my best horror stories involve either bodily fluids we don't want to talk about or words that I don't want to use on the radio. So I'm going to borrow a story from a fellow student in my master's degree program.
Okay.
And it tells us a little bit that back in those days, this was the early 80s, that clinical training wasn't quite as well supervised as it is today. And our professor would drop four of us off at a hospital, and the social worker there would simply assign us to patients or units at that moment. And we were still students, so it was quite a scary experience. And my friend Scott, who I hope is not listening, was sent up to a wing that housed people who had diabetes. And the people on that wing had all had things happen to them as a result of their diabetes. They had amputations, they were blind, there were physical impairments as a result of their diabetes. But they came together, and he was asked to lead a sing-along. Well, what's the first thing that happens when you're asked on the spot to lead a sing-along? You forget every song you've ever known. And that's what happened to Scott. He was standing there thinking, I can't think of any songs. So as a reminder, he thought of his own record collection. And the first album in his head that came to him was his Cat Stevens album. He decided not to sing Morning Has Broken. He decided to sing Moonshadow. And so he started singing, I've been followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And the group started singing with him. They all knew it from the 1980s. And then he got to the verse. And if I ever lose my leg, And he looked around the room and he realized the entire song was about losing body parts that people in the room had lost.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me afterwards that he wished he could sink 4 floors to the basement, quit music therapy, and never appear in public again.
So I remember this story. I remember exactly where I was, what classroom we were in, hearing this story, and I did the same cringe face then. Then cut to a couple years ago on the hospice floor and had a patient request Cat Stevens, and I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, I love Cat Stevens, but that story always comes to the forefront. What can I do? Do you like Moonshadow? Oh yeah, I love. Oh no, I gave a choice. Moonshadow was chosen, and the whole time I'm thinking, please let there not be any reason why this song would not be appropriate. Right after the song, the sheet comes off, and my poor patient was an amputee, and I have repeated your horror story, and he was fine. There was no issue, there was no awkwardness, but I continued to sink out of my chair into the hallway and text you that was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've been afraid of that story for years, and I lived it. So
that's really funny. Well, Scott's story had an okay ending. One of the ladies looked at him and said, "Well, honey, that's me," and she waved her leg at him, and they ended up having a good conversation, as I'm sure you did with your patient. But it was a good reminder of, pretty much the repertoire and skill it takes to be a music therapist. It's not just about playing any song.
Right. Yes, very, very true. I can't believe how fast time is going. I could probably talk to you all night. But I promised to read an email that I had gotten, a horror story email. So I want to do that with our last remaining minutes. And then I want you, Dr. King, you have the very important job of choosing the best horror story, okay?
Okay.
So this is our last submission. This is from Lori in Arizona. She says, I was working with a 5-year-old client in his home in Arizona. We were sitting on the floor, and he was having a difficult time engaging. We decided to be silly and have a backwards day, singing the goodbye song first, etc. I felt a tickle on my lower back, and assuming it was the cat, I kept singing. Felt the tickle again and saw the cat run across the room. I went to brush away whatever was on my back, and all of a sudden I had the most painful sting on my butt. Here a scorpion had gotten on my back and fallen down my pants. It was a very painful sting. I got up to try and make it to the bathroom and get it off, but I was unable to move, probably psychological. The mother heard my screams, came into the room, pulled down my pants, and realizing what was going on, proceeded to remove the scorpion from where it was clinging from my bare bottom. Then my client comes up to me and says, "So, are we done for today?" Yes. Yes, we were. I spent the rest of the day on my couch as different parts of my body took turns becoming numb and the neurotoxins circulated through my body.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, so in our last remaining minute here,
I'll
Dr.
tell you,
King.
I thought Carla was going to win it, but another rear end has won.
Right.
That is the winning story right there.
Congratulations to Lori. Thank you so much for emailing that in. We'll get her information and send her a book. I know she'll be thrilled. Thank you so much for taking the time, Dr. King, to talk with me today, to share about your book. It's just been a real honor.
Thank you for letting me do this. I'm so excited about your show, and I hope it goes on for a long time.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. To everyone, thank you so much for listening tonight. We will see you next week. Take care. Thank you for listening to Palm Beach Music Therapy Connections. We hope you enjoyed today's program and discovered new ways to bring music, art, and dance into your home or workplace. Please find a copy of today's show at pbmti.com. If you have any questions for our guest or myself, please email me at Bree, that's B-R-E-E, at pbmti.com, or call the Palm Beach Music Therapy Institute at 561-747-9944. Tune back in next week for an all-new live show. See you then.